Welcome. It's Amelia Andaleon with the Spiritually Fit Yoga podcast. So good to be here. So good to share with you today. I haven't shared a one-on-one episode with you in a while because I've been sharing about the Project See My Face videos. That's been my Instagram Live experiment, and I feel like it's working because I'm getting more comfortable recording in front of the camera. It's been helping me with my camera shyness. I've been more comfortable sharing audio episodes with you here for the podcast, but I wanted to get more comfortable being seen, letting you see my face and sharing with you what I have for this episode and all my episodes. So today it is spring cleaning, and we just celebrated the spring equinox. And in celebration of that, I've been talking about the theme of cleaning up our thoughts, of purifying, applying Saucha, which is one of the Niyamas. And the Niyamas is one of the 8 limbs of yoga. So this is a lot of words here. So there are 8 limbs of yoga. There are the first 2 limbs are the Yamas and the Niyamas, and those are guidelines on how to live our life, on what to do and what not to do, like moral restraints and ethical guidelines. And then we've got asana and pranayama, and then we have pratyahara and dharana. And then we have dhyana, which is meditation, and then samadhi, which is bliss. And today we're going to focus on Saucha, which is one of the Niyamas. And I know it might sound like a lot of words. You may not be familiar with the 8 limbs of yoga and the Sanskrit words. Totally fine. It's okay. And I will mention before I get into this episode a couple of things. One, I want to say thank you to my sponsor. It's going to be such a brief commercial, but thank you to ubindi.com. And this podcast, I am now taking subscriptions, 99 cents a month, and you can listen to any of my episodes that are longer than 30 minutes. And anything that's shorter is going to be free, and after that, it'll be a membership, a subscription membership. And I know some of you have been subscribing. Thank you so much for that. And then the last thing I want to say is go to spirituallyfityoga.com. And if you're interested in learning more about yoga philosophy or learning more about yoga teacher training, I'm offering a yoga teacher training. Go to spirituallyfityoga.com and find out more there. Okay, commercial's done. That's it. All right, so let me tell you about the Niyamas and specifically about Saucha. So spring cleaning, we think about clutter, decluttering our closets, decluttering that junk drawer. It's like you don't know where this thumbtack goes. You don't know where this rubber band goes. You don't know where, anything. It's like the miscellaneous drawer, just tossing it in there. Our closet sometimes can get cluttered when we're not thinking, we're in a hurry, because you can shut the door, you just toss in the jacket, the shoes, the clothes, the books, the magazines, whatever you want to put in the closet. Next thing you know, you open it up and it's just like you've got a pile, you've got a mountain of things that don't have a place. It doesn't have a sorted place. So anything like that can happen in our lives. I had a boyfriend one time, this is a long time ago, that I had back in the boyfriend days, and he practically lived in his car. And I remember when I first met him, his car was like immaculate. It was like so clean. And then the longer we dated, the more I noticed there would like be food tossed on the floor, the passenger seat, and then there would be, sweatshirts and whatever was in there. And it's just like, oh, this is so interesting. It's like over time, it got a little bit worse. Okay, now this story is going to be, I don't know why. Now I'm going to tell you the whole story. And then next thing I knew, we were kind of in a rocky spot. And then he picked me up in his truck. And the truck was completely clean and it had been a mess. And it's like, okay, I got a little bit suspicious. And he was getting ready to go on a date and he wasn't going to tell me, and he was getting ready to break up with me. Okay, total divergent from the topic of spring cleaning. And I don't know why that even just came to me, except that you have different motivations why you want to clean, why you would feel like you want to declutter. And that example is not a great example, probably not a great example, but it's just it's just a funny story that just totally came to me for some reason. I'm going to have to reflect on that and see why did that just pop into my head right now in the middle of a podcast episode. But I'm going to keep it in. I'm not going to edit it out, because one of the things I'm also committing to in my podcast episodes is to keep it simple. I'm prioritizing those of you that follow me on my newsletter. I was mentioning that there are 3 priorities I have this year is to simplify, to focus on aligning to my higher purpose, and then also thinking about where does my family, having a balanced family life and all of that. So simplifying for me for this podcast also means I'm not going to do a lot of editing. I'm just going to keep it real. I'm going to keep it live, and you get to see and get to feel and get to know me, Amelia Andaleon, as I am with my stories as they are. So back to the Saucha. So Saucha, and I'm going to share with you this book that I read from. I taught in class this morning about the Niyamas, and I was quoting from this book here, The Yamas and Niyamas, Exploring Yoga's Ethical Practice by Deborah, Adele. So I want to share a couple of the passages that are in here. I also mentioned Deepak Chopra, a book that I'm reading by him right now. I'm actually listening to it on Audible, is Live in Your Light. It's like yoga for self-realization. And in his chapter, week 2, he talks about the Niyamas, and he mentions Saucha and purification. It's such a good book. So go to the episode notes. I will give you a link for both of these books. So this one here by Deborah Adele about the Yamas and the Niyamas, and also the book by Deepak Chopra, which I'm going to mention a little later. But first, let me read to you about Saucha and what does this have to do with spring cleaning like yoga style. So this is really going deep. So there's the surface cleaning, like I said, the counters, the closet, and now we're going into reflecting upon ourselves. It's like, what can we purify? What can we release? All right, so Saucha. The jewel of Saucha, or purity, carries a twofold meaning. First, Saucha invites us to purify our bodies, our thoughts, and our words. As we purify ourselves physically and mentally, we become less cluttered and heavy. Purification brings about a brightness and clarity to our essence. Second, this guideline has a relational quality. No one in the above story could have known ahead of time what the outcome of the surgery would be. So there's a story about a woman having a surgery. I'll get back to that later. And yet, in that moment, there was a lesson that was learned that you clean your body, clean your mind, clean your living, and clean your workspace. Brennan Manning tells the story of a tense moment in a recovery room. A young female patient is lying in bed. Standing beside her is the surgeon who has just removed a tumor from the young woman's face. Her husband, also in the room, stands at a distance. The patient is looking at herself in a handheld mirror for the first time after the surgery. Staring at the obvious downward turned corner of one side of her mouth, she asks the surgeon if she will always look lopsided. The surgeon replies a solemn yes, noting that he had to cut a nerve to cut the tumor out. In that crucial moment, where the silence betrays a young woman doubting her future physical appeal, the husband acts. He walks over to his wife and tells her that he thinks she looks kind of cute with one side of her mouth turned down. Then he looks at her tenderly, shapes his mouth like hers, matching lip to lips, and kisses her. And what does that have to do with Saucha? So one of the things that Deepak Chopra mentions is also choosing the people in your life who will support you in the down times, support you when you could need, like in this case, the woman after the surgery, to be there with empathy and maybe even with humor. And also to detox or purify your relationships which are not supportive, which might bring you down, which might bring down your energy. So that's one way to look at purification. Whatever form purifying takes, it always begins with an intention to lighten the load we are carrying. So I'm going to lead you through a meditation and ask you a few questions to reflect on. But just think about that right now. Whatever form purifying takes, it always begins with an intention to lighten the load we are carrying. So for me, when I think about stress, when I think about moments when I'm overwhelmed, when I'm thinking about my duties, my responsibilities as a mom, maybe as a householder, taking care of the house, cleaning the house, all of that. And if I don't take the time to check in with my thoughts and check in with how I'm responding to the duties, the tasks, the responsibilities, the chores, all of that, and if I don't take the time to notice if I'm feeling burdened or if my responsibilities are starting to make me feel weighed down, then I can feel that weight. I can feel that heaviness. And yet with this practice of Saucha, this practice of cleansing by awareness, through the awareness of our thoughts, the awareness of what might we be carrying around that feels heavy, that's unnecessary. What about this relationship with this person makes me feel heavy or weighed down, or the energy feels depleted every time I spend time with them, or this activity which is unnecessary. Or if it's something that is necessary, a responsibility that I choose to be as a mom, for example, to instead not cancel out that relationship, but change my perception and my attitude towards the task or the responsibility, to clean up my attitude. So sometimes it's cleaning up a thing, and sometimes it's cleaning up your emotional response or your attitude to that thing, to the thing that's making you feel heavy. And instead, we're looking for lightness through Saucha. And then again, from this chapter from Deborah Adele, being pure with ourselves means we are not afraid of our thoughts or our feelings, and we do not have to hide anything from ourselves. Yeah, think about that. Think about if there's anything that you're in denial, anything that you're avoiding because it just feels too heavy, but at the same time, it's just getting buried. And it's getting buried, and it's getting stuck, and it's not gone. We're just not allowing it to release. So you're actually carrying it even longer than you need to. So Saucha, the practice of purification, gives us the opportunity to mindfully unearth, to mindfully excavate and release those things that don't serve us. And then the last thing that I want to read from this chapter is purity asks that we make full and honest contact with the moment so there is nothing lost and no regrets. All right. Okay, and last thing from Deepak Chopra. So these notes that I took from him, and this was his book, Living in the Light, which again, I highly recommend that book. So he mentions some suggestions on how you can apply Saucha to the emotional. So like cultivating your emotional intelligence. And you'll see this in his book, Living in the Light. Go to week 2 about the Niyamas. And he talks about 1, favor your positive emotions. 2, reject the memory of old hurts. He suggests face your feelings honestly without denying or repressing them. So that's really important. So when we say favor positive emotions, having the context of also face your feelings honestly without denying or repressing them. So we're not talking about toxic positivity. We're not talking about spiritual bypassing. We're talking about choosing to favor the positive emotions, but also honoring how you feel without repressing them. And I love how he also mentions that it's in the space of awareness, that by the awareness, by nature, it's unblemished and pure. So in that space of awareness, you see where you are in the present moment. You take the time to shine the light on what is really real. What is really real that feels heavy today? What is really real that feels cluttered today? So it's like shining that flashlight so you can see in the corners where you can see the dust bunnies, or you can see whatever's like under the pile that might be collecting in a closet that's cluttered, or that drawer that's cluttered. So shining that light so you can see and then remove what is needed, and then have a space for what you want to keep. So then when you open that up and you open the door, you can see. You can see clearly. And the same thing with our mental thoughts. It's like, what memories, what reoccurring thoughts, habitual patterns of thinking might be creating suffering because you keep repeating it over and over. And instead noticing it, shining the light of awareness, that awareness that is pure and unblemished, with no judgment or no criticism. And is it possible for you to clear out that mental chatter, to create space for ease and create space for that liberation from suffering? All right, so there is, in a nutshell, how Saucha can make a difference in your life. So let's set up for meditation. So if you're driving, you can just listen, reflect, think about it. And if you want, you can also take out a journal and write down these questions, and either journal, meditate, or reflect and think. And take a deep breath in and a deep breath out. Release, let go. So if it suits you to close your eyes, go ahead and let the eyelids softly close. Relax the body. Slow down the breath. And what is the first thing that comes to mind that you see in your mind's eye where there is clutter, an unnecessary mess, maybe a drama that keeps repeating itself over and over? See it. I get a clear picture, like what could use your clearing, your releasing to let it go. And be there in the vision of what you see, like what feels cluttered, what are you ready to release, and what is the impact of that clutter? What is the impact of the habitual patterns or thoughts? And maybe some way it could be impurities in what you're consuming in what you eat, consuming in your thoughts. It could be thoughts, behaviors, anything that doesn't serve the body, mind, or spirit. So take your time, reflect. Visualize it in your mind or write it down in your journal. We'll take some time to reflect. Now picturing in your mind's eye or having a sense of what is creating the most suffering. A habitual pattern, something that you are consuming in body, mind, or spirit that doesn't serve you. Imagine that same circumstance clear, So all of a sudden, maybe you see your closet and it's cluttered and it's a mess and it's like nothing is organized. And then imagine that it's completely clear and organized and sorted, maybe even sorting out your thoughts. What does that look like in your mind's eye? And how does the body feel? It's like, what would be the visceral response, the body's reaction to seeing something free of clutter, free of toxicity, free of the negative emotions and reactions? So imagine that in your mind, feel it in your body, and allow the possibility as you manifest that in your mind, picturing it, seeing it. And then see the contrast between the two. See the messy closet, see the beautiful, organized, clear closet. And now what is the action that you can take to get from the clutter to clearing? From the toxicity or negativity to creating a positive, open space where you feel free and liberated from suffering. Taking some time to reflect and really think about what is doable in this moment. So we're doing a little spring cleaning, mental spring cleaning, emotional spring cleaning. So what will it take for you? Is it a vacuum? Is it sweeping? Is it making phone calls? I mean, what are your action steps to clear your mental clutter, your emotional toxicity, to clean up your relationships? What step can you take next to take a step towards clearing and cleaning your space? And now imagine again that you have this superpower to visualize both situations at the same time. You can see the before and after. You can see it as it is now, and you can see the possibility when you clear and cleanse, when you detoxify, when you purify. And now as you look at both situations, both the before and after, with the before, will you send compassion towards yourself? And would you let go of any judgment, let go of any shame, let go of any anger, any of the toxic emotions towards yourself? If you find yourself judging at all for how did you get to that place of clutter, of detoxicity, to have that awareness, but have the awareness with compassion. Because now you also have the awareness that there's the possibility of cleansing and clearing, of choosing to apply Saucha, to purify from within, to purify the body, the mind, the thoughts, your life. So bringing in that compassion. It's like it happens. We all get cluttered. That's why we practice this. That's why the Yoga Sutras and our ancient yoga sages, they knew that this happens, that we get into a situation that clutter happens. It's like clutter happens, shit happens, it happens. So they already knew that's part of the human condition. It's literally part of the human condition. And yet our nature is to also cleanse and clarify. It's part of the cycle of life. And certain things we can learn a lesson so we don't continue creating the same clutter or recreating the same messes. That's a lesson that we can learn through this process. And just knowing every time we do this, we notice, and now we're doing it as a spring cleaning, you can also see the possibility. What is possible when I set my intention for a clean, clear space? Because you care, because you value yourself, because you care about clarity, and to make choices that align with you showing up connected to your center, your highest, brightest self. So take another minute reflecting, noticing anything else that's coming up. And as you go through this process, consider that you'll imagine a path from where you are now, and a path that leads you to stay connected to your center, to your higher purpose. And imagine that on this path you might see some boulders, there might be some pebbles, there might be some obstacles, there might be a little creek. And that as you visualize and you choose that you want to get to that destination, that you have a way of clearing your path and creating bridges and creating paths that allow you, placing down stepping stones that get you from one step to the next. You see another obstacle, you see the way, you get clear in your vision. You create any paths, redo the path as you need, and then you take one step to the next, and it goes on like that, moment to moment, day to day. Place your hands on your heart. So if you feel like you need more time in meditation, pause this episode and stay here as long as you need, reflecting, being in this space of cleansing and clearing, this space of awareness with compassion. And when you're ready to come back with your hands on your heart, offering yourself love, self-love, gratitude, compassion, and also acknowledge that when you take the time to practice yoga off the mat for the mind, the body, and the spirit, that you make this world a better place. It's like if all of us could do this, to be this mindful, the world becomes a better place. Acknowledge yourself for that, for your contribution, not just for self, but for the whole community all around you. And would you share what you learned today with someone else? Maybe have a conversation with somebody and say, hey, I heard this episode about Saucha, about spring cleaning in a different way. Share that episode with them. Or sit down with them and say, I have a couple of questions. Do you want to meditate with me? Do you want to journal with me? Let's do a little bit of spring cleaning together. Or maybe you're a yoga teacher here or a meditation teacher, and you'll take this to your students and lead them through a practice to apply Saucha, the Niyamas. Palms together at Anjali Mudra. Pull your thumbs at your heart space. Feel the breath against the hands. Feel the rise and fall of the chest. The expansion of the belly and the heart. The expansion of the mind and the soul. It's my honor and pleasure to lead you through this practice and this reflection today. Thank you so much for joining me in this practice of Saucha, purification. Until next time, peace out.